Look, I grew up 3 blocks from Redwood Canyon Raceway. 3 blocks. My whole life it was just this background hum of oil dust and high-octane fuel, you know? My dad, Jed Hayes, he ran Jed's Fix-It, a tiny garage. The kind of place where computer diagnostics meant Dad putting his ear right up to the engine block. I wasn't doing school plays, I was handing him wrenches. My coveralls, they were less fashion statement and more permanent record of every oil change since 2012, with the faint, metallic scent of my childhood clinging to them. So when the Canyon Cup Grand Prix, this massive, corporate televised spectacle rolled around, I just thought, why not? I scraped together every penny of my savings, all crumpled 20s and 5s, and I paid the entry fee. And that's exactly when the laughter started. I mean, I get it. I rolled my 1985 Pontiac Firebird, my Phoenix. I called her to the starting line. She was primer gray, held together with grit and maybe a little duct tape, sitting right next to carbon fiber missiles worth more than my whole neighborhood. The announcer kept making these incredibly condescending jokes about classic iron and charming nostalgia, but the worst of it, the absolute gut punch, was Sterling Vance. Sterling Vance, the track owner, the CEO of Vance Motorworks, the guy whose face was plastered on every shiny, corporate banner. He descended from his luxury box, Italian loafers clicking on the asphalt, with his whole camera crew and entourage, like he was delivering a royal decree. He circled my Phoenix slowly, deliberately, pointing out every rust spot, every sputter, just for the lenses. He looked at me, this 18-year-old kid with grease under her fingernails, and his voice was this buttery, venomous drawl. "Sweetheart," he said, his smile sharp as a broken glass shard, "I admire the enthusiasm. I really do. But real racing requires more than just wishful thinking and a car held together by prayer. Tell you what, I'm a generous man." He made a whole production of the challenge right there in front of the sponsors. If I beat even one car in the time trials, just one, mind you, he'd sponsor me for a full season. Unlimited budget. But when I lose, and he made sure to stress when, I had to agree to stay off his track, off his property, forever. No more dreaming way out of my league. The crowd went nuts. They were placing mock bets on which lap the Firebird would seize up. Humiliation, right? That's all he wanted. I took a deep breath. I gripped the wheel, felt the familiar, slightly sticky rubber under my palm, and I looked him dead in the eye, cutting through all the cameras and the noise, ignoring his security guards looming nearby. "One condition," I said, loud enough for the boom mic hovering over his shoulder to catch. Sterling Vance just chuckled a deep, confident rumble. "Oh, a condition? By all means, enlighten me. When I win," I told him, holding his gaze, "you tell everyone the truth about where your revolutionary designs really came from." His smile faltered for a second, a tiny, almost invisible flicker of panic, then it snapped back into place. He shook my hand, dramatic as ever, agreeing to terms he thought were utterly, laughably impossible. That handshake, that was the contract, while the $500,000 machines were roaring around the track, clean, precise, controlled. I was in the pit, adjusting my Phoenix. I didn't have their fancy laptops or their predictive telemetry. I had a wrench in my ears. Dad taught me that an engine has secrets, and it'll tell you those secrets if you know how to listen, if you know how to truly connect. I wasn't trying to match their perfect engineering. I was trying to find the one tiny, brilliant modification my mom had made years ago that was still hiding inside this old frame. A ghost of her genius. I tuned the carburetor by ear, checked the ignition timing by touch. Every adjustment was a conversation with the machine. When my turn finally came, the stands were noticeably half empty. The media had largely packed up. Everyone just expected the inevitable, embarrassing failure. I settled into the driver's seat. The engine idle was rough. It sounded like a cough next to their purring lions, but I heard the rhythm. That deep, hidden potential, waiting to be unleashed. The green flag dropped, and the Phoenix screamed. I mean, it just exploded. The car that sputtered and backfired in the pit suddenly had this raw, unbridled power. I hit the first turn at a speed that should have sent me straight into the wall, should have spun me out in a cloud of cheap tire smoke. But the car held. It bit the asphalt. It was stable. Even the jaded, Old mechanics in the pit stopped talking, their cigarettes frozen halfway to their mouths. My first lap time flashed up, right in the middle of the pro field. Shock, pure, silent shock. Then came the second lap. I started pushing her, trusting the steel, trusting the subtle mods I knew were there. I was cornering with the precision of a purpose-built machine, taking lines that demonstrated a deep, technical understanding of racing dynamics, an understanding I didn't get from racing school, but from reading my mother's old, messy notebooks. I kept improving. Lap after lap, the noise in the stands slowly turned from murmurs to a genuine, astonished roar. The professional drivers were getting out of their cars just to watch this beat-up Firebird fly. And then I crossed the finish line. I coasted to a stop. The board lit up. Third place overall, ahead of half the professionally sponsored, millionaire drivers. The speedway went completely silent. You could hear my Firebird ticking as the engine cooled. I killed the ignition. I didn't look at the cameras. I didn't look at the crowd. I climbed out of the Phoenix, my coveralls still stained, and I walked straight towards Sterling Vance, who was standing there beside the timing tower. His face ghost white, his confident smirk completely melted away. The drama wasn't over. It had just begun. I kept my part of the bargain, I said, my voice echoing in the sudden, vast quiet. Now, Vance, time to keep yours.
I reached into the car, right behind the driver's seat, and pulled out the one thing Dad and I had guarded our whole lives, a worn, leather portfolio. It was soft from years of handling, edged with oil stains. This wasn't just evidence. This was a holy relic, my mother's life's work. The crowd pressed in, the cameras clicking like mad, sensing the shift from sports triumph to corporate scandal. I opened it up, revealing dozens of detailed engineering drawings, patents, and design specifications. They looked decades old, yellowed and marked with coffee rings, but they contained the exact innovations that had defined modern stock car racing for the last 20 years. Sterling Vance's face went from pale to ashen. He recognized them. He had to. These were the diagrams that had supposedly originated from his R&D team, the revolutionary concepts that built his entire multimillion-dollar empire. These belong to my mother, I announced, my voice steady, sharp, and carrying every syllable over the sudden hush. Her name was Elara Vance. The name Vance hung in the air. The crowd stirred violently. Elara Vance. Same last name as the mogul. A sister? A wife? The mystery was dissolving into a corporate horror show. Elara Vance was the chief engineer at Redwood Development Corporation before you bought the company in 2005. I continued, watching the horror in Sterling's eyes intensify. She designed every single innovation you've claimed as your own. From the aerodynamic packages to the suspension systems, the ones that made your cars unbeatable. She was the ghost in the machine. I held up a specific technical drawing, the blueprint for what he had successfully marketed as the Sentinel chassis, his signature innovation. Look at the date, Sterling, I challenged, holding it up for the cameras. Completed 2 years before you even entered the racing business. Signed, clear as day, by Elara Vance. Professional mechanics and engineers in the crowd started examining the documents. They recognized the details immediately, the tiny, subtle, brilliant features they had always assumed came from Vance's highly funded research. The silence was deafening, the truth sinking in. Elara Vance was the visionary whose genius had been systematically stolen and whose name had been completely erased from history. Sterling tried to fight back, stammering, his voice strained and desperate. This is ridiculous. She was just one contributor. These were developed by teams of people over years of investment. But his voice was hollow, rattling in the face of the documentary proof. I pulled out the final document, a comprehensive report detailing not just the technical theft, but my mother's growing suspicions about his entire business practice. Internal corporate communications showing that he was actively discrediting her, isolating her from colleagues. My mother was going to expose you, I said, the pain and the anger finally breaking through into my voice. She had copies of everything. Proof you had stolen her life's work. But 3 days before she planned to go public, she died in a car accident on Highway 17. I paused, letting the implication land like a physical blow. The insurance investigation was closed quickly. Ruled driver error. Despite overwhelming evidence that her brakes failed completely. The original police report disappeared. along with the mechanic's statement about the defective brake components installed just weeks earlier. This wasn't just corporate fraud anymore. This was a story of conspiracy, possibly murder. The crowd's mood shifted from shock to genuine horror. I then pulled out my phone. Sterling, you probably forgot about this. Dad recorded it years ago. I played the video. There she was, Alara Vance. She looked just like me, but older, with this fierce, focused intelligence. She was explaining the designs, detailing the theft, and speaking with a depth of understanding that made it crystal clear. These were not collaborative ideas. They were original innovations that sprang from one exceptional mind. Her methodical documentation was exactly what we were holding in our hands. The video crushed the last shreds of Sterling's credibility. The consequences were immediate. Within 48 hours, federal investigators, IP, securities, homicide, were swarming the raceway. Sterling Vance's empire, built on a lie and a dead woman's genius, imploded. Sponsors cut ties. His stock plummeted. He was stripped of all honors. Eventually, the verdicts came down. Sterling Vance was convicted on intellectual property theft, securities fraud, and conspiracy. 25 years in federal prison. While the murder charge resulted in a hung jury, the civil court found him liable for Alara's wrongful death, ensuring he would never profit from his crimes again. More importantly, Alara Vance's name was permanently restored as the true genius who transformed racing. I found myself in a spotlight I never wanted, but I used it. I established the Alara Vance Engineering Fund, dedicated to supporting young women in automotive engineering. No more erased names. 1 year later, I was back at Redwood Canyon. The track had new owners, committed to integrity. The main event? The Alara Vance Memorial Classic. I climbed into the feature car, no longer the dusty Firebird, but a sleek, modern machine, one that Dad and I had helped design, based on my mother's foundational work. The grandstands, the same ones that had witnessed my humiliation, were now packed for a celebration of justice delayed but not denied. I carried the worn leather portfolio with me. It didn't just contain the past anymore. It held the new blueprints, the next generation of racing technology, designed by the Hayes family, built on Alara's genius, and founded on honesty. As I took my victory lap, I drove past the cheering crowd, and I raised that old, oil-stained portfolio to the sky. It wasn't about the win, not really. It was a symbol that truth and talent can absolutely triumph over power and deception. It proved that one person, armed with courage and irrefutable proof, can refuse to accept injustice as permanent. So, here's my question for you, watching this right now. When do you think the line between smart business and absolute theft really gets crossed? And if you found something like that, a huge secret that could bring down an empire, but put you and your family in danger, would you hit the track and demand the truth, like I did? Let me know in the comments below. Hit that like button if you believe justice, however delayed, will always prevail. Thanks for watching.